Djadji?
Alors,
Je ne vais pas tarder à faire rentrer les gens de la salle d'attente. Il y a déjà une 50aine de personnes.
ouais, je sais pas, ouais, j'arrive pas à partager mon écran, je sais pas pourquoi. C'est c'est renseignements sur la réunion, là, le bouton vert, là, c'est ça?
Oui, il y a marqué partager l'écran, tout simplement, je crois, en
Ah,
français.
ben non, j'ai pas ça, moi.
Au milieu,
Tout à fait, en bas.
en bas, en vert, écran partagé, si tu cliques
Écran
dessus.
partagé.
Ah oui, j'avais réduit mon écran, c'est pour ça.
Ah oui. Et après, il faut que vous ayez ouvert déjà le... Ah oui.
Voilà.
Là, c'est bon, là, je crois, non?
C'est bon.
Ok. Ben, je vais refermer, du coup, alors.
Ok. Donc, pour information, moi, je vais juste faire une introduction au début. Après, c'est Tania, qui est là parmi nous, qui va faire toutes les transitions et gérer un peu le moment, la modération entre intervenants. Et ensuite, je vais présenter la feuille de route très brièvement. Et après, une petite session questions-réponses à la fin, s'il y a des bonnes questions qui sont arrivées via le chat. Et sinon, on demandera aussi des petites réactions à la feuille de route, tout simplement, pour le moment questions-réponses à la fin. Voilà, donc je vais commencer à faire entrer les gens. Hop. Bonjour.
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 Bonjour. Bonjour.
Et bon, je ne vais pas tarder à commencer parce que...
Bonjour.
Bonjour. Alors... Ok. Bon, bonjour à toutes et
Bonjour,
tous.
collègues.
Hello everyone.
Oui, bonjour.
Bonjour, c'est Monsieur Jean de la RDC. Bonjour, chers collègues.
Bonjour. Ok, je vais commencer par une petite introduction.
Okay, I'm going to start with a short introduction. Thank you for everyone who is joining us right now.
Vous avez besoin de suivre cet atelier virtuel en anglais.
If you need to follow this,
En live. Et si vous pouvez garder vos micros coupés, ce
you need
serait
to
super.
mute your mics. Thank you, please.
So if you need to follow this virtual workshop in English, we have live translation available. You just have to click on the globe and choose English to follow. And please keep your sound muted if possible, because we don't want any more interruptions. Thank you. Donc, je vais commencer par faire une très courte introduction.
I'm going to start with a short introduction before I give the floor to Tanya. I'm Eva Radek. I'm in charge of the events and the coalitions at Climate Change, and I will moderate this session on energy, access to energy, with Tanya, who is in charge of the program and the observatory. If you have any questions, any comments you want to make, please do not hesitate to share directly via our chat box. There will be a time of Q&A at the end of this session. Thank you for joining us. We had about 400 or over 400 people who registered for this workshop regarding access to energy. We're glad to welcome all of you on this call. Just a short reminder regarding climate change. We are an international association funded in 2015, just prior to the COP21. The objective of climate change is to gather the various stakeholders, non-state stakeholders. We organize various international events. Last year, we were to organize our third summit in Kigali, Rwanda, but of course, due to the pandemic, we were not able to do so, which is why we decided to start running virtual workshops since July of 2020 for our African coalitions. Just to give you a little bit of context, we started the second round of virtual workshops in February of this year, and we will have 2 workshops every month to cover all the various topics of the African coalition. You can visit our website to look at all the workshops and the topics which will be running until mid-June. Today's topic is access to energy in Africa. And we have a few goals which I will present to you. Our first goal is, first of all, to have a look at the roadmap. We have sent an updated roadmap to all of our participants, and the purpose is to be able to collectively validate and confirm this roadmap, which has been enriched with the various contributions and the comments of the contributors of this coalition. Thank you for all your feedback. Second goal will be to move on, and we want to especially focus on best practices and sharing best practices and mapping of the various stakeholders, which is why we have identified project owners, projects which are more replicable. And the third object or goal of this workshop is to have an interactive time for open discussion. Once again, feel free to send your comments and your questions via the chat box so that we can answer these questions. Just to introduce our speakers for today, we have Alexis Caujolle, who is a program manager at the Geres, which is an organization working with the coalition, and Alexis will present along with Victor Romero Amigo, who is in charge of international cooperation at the Partenariat partnership NGO. Then we will have Maïmouna Diouf. She is a project manager at Energy and Climate Change at Enda NGO. Then we will have Stéphane Redon from SOCEN, who also was with us during our first workshop last September. And then we will also have Djadji Touré, project manager at Avento and Valorem, who will conclude this session. Thank you to all of our speakers for being here with us today and allowing to share your experiences. I will start now with Alexis Caujolle, who is working at the Geres Association, and you have 7 minutes to present your PowerPoint. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Eva, for the invitation and for organizing this workshop. I have a short presentation to share with you.
Eva, tu peux me confirmer qu'on voit bien mon écran?
C'est bon.
Ok, super. J'ai une présentation très rapide du Geres.
This is a short presentation of the Geres.
Au sujet qui nous intéresse donc aujourd'hui sur l'accès à l'énergie.
Before we talk about access to energy, Geres is an NGO for development founded in 1976, working mainly on improving living conditions and fighting against climate change through various businesses like access to energy, with a concept that has been developed by Geres. We also work on the deployment of renewable energies, and then the control of energy demand. Also work on the improved households, and two other topics, support to policies and climate action, and another one regarding mobilizing stakeholders, which is really engaging people for greater solidarity. Now, regarding the countries where we work, quickly, as you can see on this map, we work in Southeast Asia, West Africa, in the Maghreb, in France. We have teams, local teams we work with, and technical support in other parts of the world. Now, for our topic for today, which is access to energy. For us, access to energy is a means to develop social and economic levers, like access to renewable energy, to access to energy, to make sure that everyone can have access to energy. So that is an inclusive dimension. We have a big project, a program dedicated to electrified areas. What do we mean by that? What we call the electrified activity areas or zones. These are mini grids, power grids dedicated to small and very small enterprises or companies or entrepreneurs, developers and entrepreneurs in some areas did not have the necessary means to meet all the various constraints. So we are running power kits so we have access to various kits which are limited in power, or mini networks which only deliver power at certain hours in the night or with a limited power. Therefore, the producers had difficulties developing their activities and had to sometimes go back to manual energy. So that's why we started our program to try to develop a new concept, which is electrified zones, which are mini grids. We develop a hub, electrified hub, which will provide electricity 24 hours, 7 days a week, with sufficient electricity to allow companies not to have to worry about the access to energy. We started 2 pilot schemes in Mali, one in 2016, the other one in 2019. And both of these projects welcome or host about 20 small companies like bakeries and grocery stores, all kinds of small companies which can enjoy the access to electricity in rural areas. What we have learned from these pilot schemes, that energy not only is necessary, but is not sufficient, There's a real need to strengthen the capacity of stakeholders, whether they be companies or private or public sector stakeholders. Therefore, the Geres has developed a program to support the entrepreneurship, to help partners, stakeholders to be able to access markets, to develop their own companies, and to facilitate their access to credit as well. These people have to invest in their own business. So this shows the help that our program provides with a quality energy, renewable energy, professional premises, a program to enhance financial capacities, and a support, technical support, and facilitation to access to finance. The second thing is the social engineering and the governing model. We have been working more and more in partnership between private and public sectors, between local actors and a local manager in charge of the administrative management of these electrified areas. We have a private manager, and we try to reach a competence that would help sustain this infrastructure and to make it viable, financially speaking. These two pilot schemes have enabled us to validate this kind of model of program. Here you can see the electrified area in southeast of Mali. Here on this picture, you can see the various men and women, entrepreneurs who are benefiting from this program and helping us develop our program. And thanks to this enhanced access to electricity, have been able to develop their businesses further. We are duplicating or replicating this model. We have done 6 other programs similar to these two one. We have tried to develop the quality of our services. These are internal projects, but we also support organizations, outside organizations, study offices, NGOs. We also support them and help them to replicate this model, our model, on their own territories where they work, to speed up the development of these programs. This is what Victor now is going to be talking about with an example in Senegal, where we have been able to develop one electrified zone in Saint-Louis, and we plan on developing new areas with the technical support from the Geres. So we want to draw lessons from our experience both in Mali and Senegal to speed up the development of these programs. I now give the floor to Victor.
Alors, je dois juste attendre que... Ouais, parfait. Je vais en profiter du coup le temps que je charge la présentation pour évidemment remercier Climate Change pour...
Before we can share the screen, I just want to thank Climate Change for giving us the opportunity to share what we are doing.
Est-ce que c'est OK?
Oui, c'est bon.
OK, merci. Du coup, en 2 mots, je vais faire comme Alexis, mais de manière très brève.
In a very short way, I'm going to do a quick presentation of our association, Partenariat, partnership. We are celebrating 40 years of activity. We work on two axes on international cooperation. For the last 40 years, we've been working in Senegal, Morocco, and for the last 5 years in Guinea. We are also working to support local policies, access to services, health services. We also work on other issues such as environment, sustainability, and access to energy. We also have another aspect in our work, which is access to international solidarity and education with various workshops and an educational model regarding interculturality and other topics in the north of France, in Lille. We have been able to get the support of the Geres, technical support in our program, just to give you a context of what we have done regarding access to energy. We started working in the northern part of Senegal, mainly in Saint-Louis, at the border of Mauritania, close to the Atlantic Ocean. What the local partners had noticed, and mainly the regional development agency of Saint-Louis, the issues that were raised were typical ones which can be found in other areas of West Africa, like a great disparity in access to energy and to electricity, a disparity between various areas, rural and urban areas. And what Alexis was saying earlier on, we noticed that the lack of access to energy, of course, is an obstacle to the economic development of the companies. Another specificity of this territory of Saint-Louis, mainly a climate change issue, which is quite strong in this area, with a rise of waters on the Atlantic front and a desertification in the more desert areas, and also due to the use of firewood. When we implemented this, before we implemented this program, we had already started supporting local actors regarding alternative solutions. Since 2017, we launched a new program with the technical support of Geres and the Regional Agency for Development to find some new solutions for renewable energy, with also the French Development Agency and other private actors. Therefore, we were able to bring some solutions and join this program through three axes: sectorial steering groups and dynamic. We are here to support the Regional Agency for Development and local authorities by developing a public policy for access to energy. We've been working on mitigation and adaptation in order to promote low carbon solutions in that area. We have also worked at a consultation with various stakeholders. We were able to get in touch with another NGO, local NGO, Enda. The point of working together with other companies and NGOs have really been helpful to develop other solutions. We are also working at strengthening our connection with companies, local companies, both for solar and gas solutions, and also working at raising awareness from the civil society, working mainly with landscape companies. Sorry for speaking fast, speaking too fast, but if you do not, if you do have questions, sorry, you can ask them later on. Now, our second axis is regarding the sharing of best practices and new low carbon technology. We have here two examples on this picture. The MBIDI platform, which you can see on the left-hand side, with an integrated approach for a small, very small company with a solar system solution and the construction of a building on the right-hand side. In another part, in Cascas village, we have helped with other solutions for pumping a solar pump system. We really come alongside these people to bring other solutions which can be replicated afterwards. I have already used my 7 minutes, so I will now stop for my presentation. Thank you. I will be around if you have any more questions. Thank you, Victor and Alexis, for your presentation. It's been great to see that 2020 projects continue despite the impact of the crisis, and that your projects continue to develop. We will now give the floor to Maïmouna Diouf. She's project manager at Enda Energie. Thank you very much. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share this presentation and share our best practices. I'm going to introduce first our association, Enda, working for access to energy, climate change, gender and energy, and also on sustainability. Therefore, our presentation will focus on access to energy to reinforce women's resilience. Just to give you a bit of a context, at a national scale, there is a lower engagement or implication of women when it comes to energy, access to energy. It's an unequal access, inequalities of gender between men and women regarding access to energy, and also inequalities between the urban and the rural areas. Also, another issue is difficulty to access employment, low transition towards clean cooking appliances. We also notice a higher demand for cooking fuel to keep up with demographic growth, especially in the rural areas. And it's not always taken into consideration and often is forgotten in the discussions around access to energy. We also have commitments in terms of contribution, national contributions, the CDM, NDCs, but also in terms of gas emission reduction. Now, moving on to our goals to reinforce the resilience of women producers in the area of the Senegal River for greater food safety. The idea is to contribute to an empowerment of the women in that region of Saint-Louis, but also to increase the farming productivity of women farmers by empowering their capacities and also giving them a greater access to energy and climate information, and also the development of adaptation and mitigation strategies. Now, in terms of implementation, we mentioned farming. When we talk about farming, agriculture, we are talking about access to land. These women had to be supported so that we could advocate a greater and easier access for women to land farming, to develop further productions. We did have some good results after this approach. Following this program, we also implemented access to energy with the help of solar pumping systems, and also access to climate data, and also climate to market, to be able to sell the products which the women have produced through this project. There is a local market. So all of these points have helped to really empower women through agricultural production. Now, regarding the various results which we have seen, with access to land, as I said earlier on, there's been an advocacy through local authorities. These women were given 0.9 hectares of land, or 9 hectares of land rather, 8 hectares for the women in Caujolle, 1.5 hectares for the women in Diama, another 1.5 hectares that was given to women in Jangambal. They already had these lands, but they tried to put fences around these pieces of land. Now, regarding access to energy, following access to land, we have access to energy. The idea was to develop these areas, to secure these lands, these pieces of land, and to also set up a solar pumping system to replace diesel systems, which help them reduce by 40% their costs, which of course is beneficial for these groups. Therefore, they've been able to reinforce their economic capacities. As part of this project, another area that was taken into account was the development of capacities, capacity developing through training, through access to climate data. This is something that these women, these groups of women experience on a daily basis, but being able to help them understanding what it entails has been very helpful, and also help them understand what are the farming risks or hazards. We worked with the Civil Aviation Association, and this association were sending text messages to these women who followed the training, and these women were in charge of transmitting the information, sharing the information regarding weather conditions and climate. This climate information played a great role if women were to water their lands, for example, but if they get the information that rain was on its way, then of course this would save some time, and they did not have to water their land anymore. So they also got information regarding air quality and various activities. Another aspect was the access to climate information. The other aspect was training in leadership, on training for a management for local leadership and local management. If you can see the picture on your right-hand side, these are onions. This is close to the border. So people from the neighboring countries come to this local market to buy from them. So everything that was produced was sold. Now, regarding the ecosystem of the various stakeholders, Edna has been a technical partner to this project.
Maïmouna, il vous reste 1 minute.
D'accord, je vais bientôt terminer. Et donc, pour les différents acteurs, nous avons
various actors like Anasim. Okay, I will move on to the next slide showing the various ways of cooking to develop and enhance the cooking equipment. We often forget this aspect, which is very important when it comes to energy consumption, also to remind ourselves.
Mais il ne s'agit pas de faire seulement l'analyse spécifique.
It's not just an analysis specifically, but we also want to underline the difference, discrepancy between the rural and the urban areas. We need to take into account these various equipments, which are very cost effective, and other advantages that we have noticed in terms of reducing energy poverty, and also the SDG number 3, which is mitigation of health risk or hazards by reducing the smokes and having safer cooking quality appliances. Also the reduction of women work when we talk about reducing the collection of firewood. So enabling these women to have a better equipment has helped them to also develop other activities to generate other sources of income, and also to contribute to the development of modern action. All these good practices or best practices have helped develop a more modern equipment, and also to reduce, of course, gas emission, greenhouse gas emission. These are two issues that are very important. And when we tackle these issues, we actually also reach the other SDGs. Another one is reducing the pressure in the forests. Sorry, I think I've already finished my time, but that's what I wanted to share with you today. Thank you for your attention. Thank you very much. Thank you, Maïmouna, for your presentation. This was very important. Now, let's move on to the next presentation with Stéphane Redon, virtual, and who has been able to work on a project of public lighting in Uganda. Stéphane, you have 7 minutes to present your PowerPoint. Now, we had a project which started a few months back now, which we are trying to share with you. We don't want just to mention a concept, but we want to look at what we have actually achieved. After 6 months of activities, so we've been working in West Africa, and it's been difficult with the constraints lately. Secondly, we want to explain that this topic is more in a context of an urban situation. There is also pressure, of course, in the rural areas, but people tend to migrate toward the cities. So it was very important to look at this project, even though there are also dimensions concerning the rural areas, even though we've been mainly focusing on large cities. But we will probably notice some impact on smaller cities or rural areas, just to remind you of our objectives and our lesson learned from our studies, and to let you know also about our latest developments and explain to you what we have been doing and what other things we are developing. Quickly, let's look at a project in West Africa, and mainly in Uganda, which shows this country, even though there is, like many countries in Africa, a deficit of public lighting, only covering about 8% of the urban roads in Kampala, and even down to 1% in secondary cities. So we developed this concept with Kampala, with the help of other companies, or to develop this public lighting network. And we thought it would be interesting to also develop another project in secondary cities. There are some initiatives existing with the KCCA, which is a Kampala authority. The US MID is a project supported by the World Bank and Fundem initiative to work together with association stakeholders and industries specialized in public lighting equipment. The objective of this initiative was to develop a methodology and an approach, a disruptive approach, in order to not only supply or sell equipment, but to actually think about a system for public lighting that could include 3 components: guarantee of quality or warranty of quality with good quality equipment, a contractual innovation to make sure that the infrastructure would be sustainable, that we would be selling not only an equipment, but actually a service with a technical capacity. We've been thinking about a various approach, contractual innovation, and the third lever, which is a core building construction or co-building a structure to involve both companies and also local governments and populations, so that people could all be involved upstream and downstream. Now, regarding development, our project was to be run in 2 phases. The first phase was a preliminary studies with an existing audit and a lighting plan, global lighting plan. So this was done in March. Now we're moving on to the second phase, which is the service implementation, delivery and commissioning, which we will run until September. And then we will move on to the third phase, which will be a service warranty to make sure that that at the end of the day, the local government can really get hold of the project in order to replicate this project further on. What we have done mainly was to first study the project to see where we needed to have public lighting. We cannot put public lighting everywhere. We had to make choices. So we have been doing a lot of study work to understand what would be the needs and to look at what was at stake in terms of safety, economic development, city attractiveness, to understand where the populations would be located and where to start the lightning to have a greater impact, especially in areas when there is a night activity. The challenge, as you can see here, is that was to start from a mainly non-existing grid, and then we looked at what we could do and what could become or be developed. On the right-hand side, this is a project, but what is at stake here is to have a global vision of what could become a universal lightning system in most cities, and we worked on various axes depending on the technology that was chosen. Here we worked on a educational level. What was important was to explain that lightning is one thing. In all of our studies, we worked at defining what does it mean to have a lightning services, how to adapt lightning services with various levels, which could be different from one activity to another and from one geographical area to another. The key success factors, we try to gather three main stakeholders. First of all, the population, right from the start of the project, to try to understand what would be the priorities, which areas, locations would be in priority, and also the surveillance and the monitoring of these equipments. Unfortunately, sometimes people might be stealing the equipment, so we have developed monitoring committees. We also developed capacity building of city managers to manage the planification, and then develop local actors who will become the warrantor to guarantee, the future of the equipment. Now, the operational system helped us to identify pilot locations where we were able to experiment the new technology through solar systems, even though it might not always be the universal solar lightning system. We will also use other technologies by using various systems, which can be also very cost effective, in order to give the local authority the control over the lightning, over its functioning, over its economy. Maybe offer a few hours of lightning per night. We try to keep a balance between the economy and the social aspects. Now, what about our project executions and our prospects for the future? We are developing a scale-up project in 20 or so cities in Uganda. We have developed a sort of dialogue between the population and the local stakeholders in every city to identify what is needed. What you can see here is a routine between policies and frameworks, awareness, financial, economic, and implementation capacity. We have developed a working group in the various territories with all kinds of people who are specialized in the lightning business, so as to make a roadmap to be followed to replicate these programs in other secondary cities, to be able to replicate this project in other cities. Here, this picture was taken last week. We had a workshop. We organized a workshop to help people, to get people to discuss, on the one hand, all the beneficiaries of this program, operators, servers operators. And we are also developing other skills to try to bring other solutions through solar energy. The FMDV, of course, is being one of them. For capacity building, the FMDV was facilitating this workshop to discuss the touchy issue of access to financing, to find financial partners to support these programs. The French Development Agency, for one, has been supporting the city of Kampala and is hoping to develop other tools for secondary cities. That's it for me. Thank you very much. And I will see you again in a few months to show you concrete results of what we are expecting. Thank you very much, Stéphane. It's great to see how your project was able to develop further. Now we will listen to our last speaker, Djadji Touré from Valorem, and he's going to explain what they are doing in Casamance in Senegal.
C'est bon, vous voyez mon partage?
Pas encore.
Pas encore.
Ah,
oui, là c'est bon.
Bon. Bonjour à tous et bonjour.
Hello everyone. Thank you, Climate Change, for inviting us to this workshop. I'm Djadji Touré, Head of Project at Valorem in Africa, in Senegal, with Avento. And I will present to you one of our projects, which is a project of a green mini network in Senegal. Senegal, if you don't know, but I'm sure everyone does, is situated on the west coast of West Africa with a population of 16 million people. With an ambitious program for electrification of the country, and is among the pioneers in this in Africa. Now, regarding electrification in rural areas, Senegal, like many other countries in Africa, has many challenges to face to reach universal access to electricity for all. Therefore, the government divided up the country in 10 electricity zones or areas. And 7 of these zones were given to the management of private companies, and 3 others were left. And our project concerned these 3 areas that have not yet been attributed to any specific companies. In 2019, there was a 60% level access to electricity at a national level. Things have not changed that much since 2019, and in the rural areas, we are reaching about 40% of access to energy. So the rural areas have less access to electricity in Africa and mainly in Senegal.
S'il est possible de mettre le PowerPoint en grand écran en cliquant sur diaporama.
Pardon, oui, c'est vrai.
Comme ça, on va pouvoir mieux voir.
C'est bon?
Voilà, parfait. Oui, oui, oui.
Okay.
Merci.
Donc, je parlais tout à l'heure d'Avento, donc qui est
So Avento is connected to the Valorem group in France and are among the pioneers for renewable energy development. Valorem is a key player in independent producer for electricity. This is about 300 people working in France, but also throughout the world for developing renewable energy. It's a multiple energy actor specialized in solar PV and hydroelectricity. Valorem also has a foundation. One of your speakers mentioned this foundation. We also finance various programs and projects for access to electricity. One of these projects is the one I'm presenting to you now. This project is a project which we have been developing in partnership with the Aquitaine region in France. And also in Ziguinchor, in Casamance. And also What for Change funds. It's a rural electricity program. As I said earlier on, Senegal divided its country in 10 different areas or zones. 7 of these zones were attributed to private actors, or public actors rather, and the 3 remaining zones can be managed by private sectors with local initiatives in partnership with a local association which initiated this project. So this is part of a broader program in this region. We have about 15 local communities in this area which do not have access to electricity. Out of these 15 communities, villages, we chose one, which will be the first village to be electrified, and the project will be replicated in the other communities. We have therefore signed a partnership convention with AZER in order to develop a local society.
Oui, allô?
Tu peux continuer, Djadji, je crois qu'il y a juste
Ouais.
une intervention.
Donc, Valorem, dans son ADN, c'est...
Valorem always seeks to make sure that the project would be handled by local actors through local association and the bookkeeping department. This is a project, as you can see. We are going to set up a solar plant, PV plant, without any because it is a rural area, a remote area, and we figured that it would be difficult to reach this area without regular electricity cables. We have developed the project so that the village can be autonomous for 3 days. We have about 50 households. We have about 400 people in the village. And also a clinic, a health clinic. Another issue is to connect a productive network. One of the challenges that we are facing is that private stakeholders have not yet found the sustainable business model to be able to develop projects in rural areas. So we decided to try to identify the various activities that generate income in the village to support these people, which is why we also developed a market gardening in order to develop local economy, to be able to pay the electricity bills.
Voilà, de toute la façon, je vais conclure, j'ai terminé. Donc après, voilà, donc ça, c'est en termes d'état d'avancement du projet avec toutes les...
This is to show you where the project is at with the various steps and stages of this project, mainly funded by Valorem and the Aquitaine region. This shows the various steps to obtain the authorizations and develop the project further. Thank you. Now, quickly, because we have already covered our time, but just to show you the roadmap.
Pour vous rappeler les... je me présente Romain Crouzet.
Sorry, I'm Romain Crouzet, Program Director at Climate Change. I've been listening to all of you very attentively, just to remind you that the purpose of these coalitions that Climate Change has been facilitating and the various workshops that we have been doing regularly, not only as part of our annual summit, but also through our virtual workshops. What we're trying to do, of course, is what we have just done today, which is sharing our best practices in various areas in the African context. And we try to insist on the fact that we can replicate some of these programs and initiatives so that other stakeholders can learn from these programs, learn from what has worked. Therefore, what we're doing is not sufficient, and what we've been trying to do with the roadmap on top of just sharing best practices is to make sure that these coalitions, which are now gathering around over several hundred people who connect, who add up to the coalition to share this information. So what we're trying to do here is to make sure that through these coalitions we can come up with some new projects in more practical ways, and for these coalitions to become a way of sharing common initiatives as non-state actors, to carry these initiatives or proposals to developers and governments. that's the whole purpose of this roadmap, actually, is to come up with some more practical and concrete solutions so that we can even take it further. And I hope we can meet again physically and run other summits when we can exchange more in-depth. Hopefully, we should be able to announce soon that we will be able to organize another climate change summit, which should take place in Dakar at the fall, in the autumn of 2021. Of course, the conditions for organizing this summit will be different due to this pandemic context. But I think we'll be able to use this time to actually come up with some common proposals. I've heard a lot about being able to replicate various programs. I've heard a lot about limitations due to the norms. And I believe that this coalition could actually produce some common recommendations during our next summit, recommendations which we could address not only to the Senegalese government, but to other governments in the region of West Africa. For the last year or so now, we've all been working from a distance and meeting from a distance, but I just wanted to give you a perspective of a possible opening. And we will pay attention to our future announcement to make sure that we can come up with more concrete and practical solutions. We have gathered over 120 people today. We are so glad to hear that you are all interested in this. I'm not going to say more. I think you've given you've shared the core of what it's all about, but we will be sending this roadmap to all of our members. But please do not hesitate to come back to us if you have any more practical solutions, concrete answers. The purpose is to come up with very practical solutions. What we will do is that we will send the questions to all of our speakers, but I would ask all of our speakers to share quickly a brief feedback regarding the roadmap. I know Stéphane has a lot of ideas already. Stéphane, would you like to start?
Alors effectivement,
en une petite minute, si possible.
Ouais. Non, je pense qu'encore une fois, très simplement, moi j'ai...
Very simply and quickly, just as Romain just said, I think it's important that we could think about, as I've just done, because I've just returned from a mission and I've come across many initiatives like yours. I think it's time now for action. And I think it's important to see how the coalition could be a game changer to meet some more pragmatic issues. So we all want to come up with some solutions. And I think through this roadmap, we should be able to raise the appropriate questions. And I think this would be a win-win participation for all. I think what we're expecting is a commitment from everyone. And secondly, through the project that I'm developing in Uganda and the discussions that I will have with climate change in the coming days, is to understand how this particular project, like others, could be supported, could maybe be used for other projects in other sectors and find ways to bring more cooperation and to develop more ambitious programs. What I have heard today was very interesting. I think there are no bad initiatives, but the purpose is to see how we could do things better and quicker rather than developing our own projects. I think we should be able to now develop mechanisms which we could all share from to develop things at a larger scale. And I would be encouraged to see a roadmap that would be even further focusing on actions, even though dialogue and discussions are very important, of course, but to see other concrete developments. Alexis and Victor, would you like to give us your feedback?
Oui, je ne sais pas si Alexis, tu veux commencer?
Non, vas-y, je t'en prie, Victor.
Okay, merci. Oui, je pense que je rejoins Stéphane. On voit ici que différentes
Just like Stéphane, as we can see from what we've just heard today, is that there are various initiatives. They're all very interesting. One of the main challenges for actors like ours is to be able to scale up. Therefore, to be able to reach our goal of low carbon and resilience, we want to see a real impact. It's always good to start from something more practical and concrete, and then we can be inspired by these programs to develop other initiatives that would be replicable in various contexts in other countries. Even though nothing would be perfect, we all have various economical, social constraints, but it's important to have a common roadmap toward a scaling up.
Je rejoins en tout cas les deux conclusions. Juste un mot peut-être que j'ai souligné.
One last word for the roadmap, which is something I mentioned already. I think it's important to focus on equality, to access to energy. So far, we've seen some technical solutions that have not allowed populations to come out of the energetical poverty. I think we need to get a broader vision and consider various levels of access to energy.
On voit énormément de gens qui passent d'une situation de non-accès à une situation de précarité énergétique ou de pauvreté énergétique, que ce soit en zone rurale ou
whether it be in rural areas or peri-urban areas, we want to see people being able to access to energy and come out of an energy poverty. I think there's a real challenge there to work also on the quality of the access to energy.
Mais de travailler sur des solutions
and also to work on technical solutions, economical and social solutions to enable people to come out of this poverty, this kind of poverty, and not just simply offer an access to energy, which is why we work on this.
Souligné dans la feuille de route et je rejoignais également.
This is what I mentioned as in my comments regarding the roadmap.
Ok, super, merci beaucoup Alexis. On voudrait quand même juste écouter aussi la réaction de Maïmouna et de Djadji.
Quickly, we want to listen to Maïmouna and Djadji. Maïmouna, if you're still there, would you like to comment?
Est-ce qu'on aura le droit d'intervenir, madame?
On voudrait beaucoup, mais on est vraiment limité en termes de temps.
Unfortunately, we will not be able to listen to any other comments. You can send us your reaction or your comment by email.
Il y a déjà des conclusions très intéressantes par rapport à la.
We've heard some very interesting conclusions regarding the roadmap. And I want to focus on inclusive initiatives so that we can take into account the most vulnerable population so that they can be included in the various programs, and also to take into account, when we talk about access to energy, to talk about the different levels of energy, renewable energies and other types of energy, and projects that would upgrade activities that would generate some income to develop employment for women, for youth. For me, that's all very important as well. I think my colleague who has been involved in this coalition from the start, so that was really interesting to listen to all of the speakers and to look at the roadmap, and we will contribute to it. To reduce to reduce poverty and to facilitate access to energy. And our last speaker now. Djadji, I think everything else has been said already. I completely agree with what my colleagues have said. Indeed, we should try to develop synergies between the NGOs, private actors, civil society, and the state, so that we can all play our part and carry this together for rural electrification, which is a social battle, really, as I said earlier on. Usually in the rural areas, people have less access to energy. Therefore, this is where we need to focus on these areas. People pay a higher price for electricity in these regions. Therefore, we have to join our efforts to improve their situations. We'll stop for now. Thank you very much for all your additional comments. We have to conclude. We want to thank all of our participants who have stayed till the end of our virtual workshop. We will send you all of the PowerPoint presentations which were presented to you today, as well as the recording of this session in French and in English, and the new roadmap, which is still open to your comments and your suggestions for the coming weeks. We will meet again in 2 weeks' time on April 1st for our next virtual workshop on sustainable mobility, and on April 15 for sustainable building. Please do not hesitate to visit our website where you will find more information for our next workshops. We want to thank also our translator who has stayed with us till the end. And I say goodbye for now and see you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bonne fin de journée.
Bonne soirée à tous.
Merci, bonne soirée à tous.
Merci.
Merci de nous avoir permis de rejoindre.
Merci beaucoup.
En tout cas,
Merci et bonne soirée à tous.
Bonne soirée.
On peut avoir les contacts de Djadji.
Il y a quelqu'un qui a parlé de